The screen was filled with 40 faces, all watching in silence. Torin's face was bright red, his expensive webcam capturing every vein pulsing in his neck. He was shouting, and I could see my coworkers looking away, pretending to check their notes. "Althea, I don't care about your security protocols. Unlock that file right now." His voice echoed through my headphones, sharp and demanding. I kept my expression calm, my hands folded in my lap where the camera couldn't see them trembling slightly. "Torin, that file contains the private home addresses of our investors. I cannot unlock it on an unsecured server. It violates company policy and puts everyone at risk." I spoke slowly, clearly, the way I always did when explaining procedures. But Torin wasn't listening. He never did. His jaw clenched, and I watched him lean closer to his camera, his eyes wild with frustration. "You are an admin, Althea. You're a glorified calendar keeper. You are replaceable." The words hung in the digital air. I saw Myria cover her mouth. I saw Halden close his eyes. Then Torin paused, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "In fact," Torin continued, his voice dropping to something almost theatrical, "you're replaced. Log off. Ansel will take over your access credentials. Get out of my meeting." The silence that followed was suffocating. I could see the pity in my colleagues' eyes, the way they quickly looked away from their cameras. Some people's video feeds went black, as if they couldn't bear to witness what was happening. I had known this was coming eventually, but the public nature of it still stung. I looked directly at the camera, at Torin's smug face in his expensive home office. "Are you sure about this, Torin?" I asked quietly. I wanted to give him one last chance to reconsider, to remember who I actually was and what I actually did for this company. But he was too far gone, too caught up in his own performance. "Go now!" he screamed, spittle flying at his screen. I nodded once slowly. "Okay." My cursor moved to the red button at the bottom of the screen. I clicked Leave Meeting, and everything went black. I sat there in the sudden silence of my home office, my hands still trembling, my heart pounding. Then I closed my laptop and stood up. My name is Althea, and Torin had just fired the only person who knew how to turn on the lights. I needed to tell you how I got here, to this moment. 10 years ago, I was 23 and desperate for a job. I had just graduated with a business degree and mountains of student debt. Eamon's company was small then, maybe 30 employees, but it was growing fast. He needed someone organized, someone trustworthy, someone who paid attention to details that others missed. I became his personal assistant, and from the very first day, Eamon treated me like a partner, not a servant. He was old school in the best way. He didn't trust clouds or servers or any of the newfangled technology that promised to make everything easier. "People hack computers, Althea," he would say, tapping his temple. "But they can't hack loyalty." So he taught me everything, where the backup servers were hidden, how to access the offshore accounts, the passwords to the legal documents and the investor files. Over the years, as the company grew from 30 people to 300, I became what Eamon called the keeper of the keys. I held the master passwords, the bank tokens, the security codes. Most importantly, I held the legal proxy for the Founders Trust, which controlled 40% of the company's voting shares. I wasn't just an assistant. I was the company's institutional memory, its guardian. 6 months ago, everything changed. Eamon's health started failing. His doctors found something serious, something that required immediate attention and long-term care. At 72, he decided it was time to step back. The board of directors held an emergency meeting to find his replacement. They wanted someone young, someone who understood technology, someone who could take the company into the future. They chose Torin. He was 35, drove a white Tesla that he parked in Eamon's old spot, and drank kombucha from a metal straw. He used words like synergy and disruption in every sentence. In his first company-wide email, he wrote, "We're going to burn the old playbook and build something revolutionary." I remember reading that and feeling a cold dread settle in my stomach. I was the old playbook. From the moment Torin arrived, he hated me. He never said it directly, but I could see it in his eyes whenever I reminded him of a protocol or questioned one of his decisions. To him, I represented everything he was hired to destroy: tradition, caution, and institutional knowledge. Within his first month, he moved my desk out of the executive suite where I had worked for a decade. He put me in the hallway near the bathrooms. He stripped away my title of chief of staff and changed it to admin assistant on the company directory. 3 months after Torin arrived, he hired Ansel. "This is my cousin," Torin announced at a staff meeting, his arm around a skinny kid who looked barely old enough to vote. Ansel is a genius with technology. He's going to help us modernize our systems. I looked at Ansel's resume later. Under work experience, he had listed crypto enthusiast and social media consultant for family business. Under education, he had some college. He was 22 years old, and Torin wanted to give him access to our most sensitive data. Althea, I need you to train Ansel, Torin told me in his office that afternoon. He's going to take over all the password management and security protocols. You're too slow, too cautious. We need someone who moves fast. I wanted to argue, but I had learned that arguing with Torin only made things worse. So I tried to train Ansel. I really did. I created detailed instruction manuals. I scheduled training sessions. I walked him through every system step by step. But Ansel didn't want to learn. He refused to take notes. I've got a photographic memory, he said, tapping his head the same way Eamon used to, but without any of the wisdom behind it. He wrote passwords on sticky notes and left them stuck to his monitor. He clicked on phishing emails. He gave his login credentials to people over the phone without verifying who they were. 1 month ago, I caught Ansel about to wire $50,000 to a phishing scammer. The email had looked legitimate at first glance, pretending to be from one of our suppliers, but the account number was wrong. I happened to walk by his desk just as he was entering the authorization code. Stop! I practically shouted, startling him so badly he knocked over his energy drink. I showed him the signs of the scam, explained how to verify legitimate requests, and quietly fix the security holes he had created. Then I went to Torin. I knocked on his office door, and he barely looked up from his phone. Torin, we need to talk about Ansel. He almost sent $50,000 to a scammer today. I stopped it, but this is serious. He's not ready for this level of access. Torin finally looked at me, his eyes cold and annoyed. Stop trying to sabotage him, Althea. You're jealous of his potential. You're from the old guard, and you can't handle that we're evolving past your methods. I stood there, stunned. I'm trying to protect the company, I said quietly. No, you're trying to protect your job, he snapped back. Ansel is the future. You're the past. Accept it. I realized something important in that moment. It didn't matter how good I was at my job. It didn't matter that I had given 10 years of loyal service. Torin wanted me gone, and eventually he would find a reason. The morning of my firing was supposed to be the most important day in company history. The board of directors had scheduled what they called the Centurion Vote for 2:00 in the afternoon. It was a review of Torin's performance as CEO. He had been in charge for 6 months, and now the board would decide whether to renew his contract for another 3 years. The vote required unanimous approval from all voting shareholders. If even one person voted no, Torin would be out. I had known about this meeting for weeks. I had helped coordinate the schedules, sent the calendar invites, prepared the documents. Torin had been increasingly stressed as the date approached. He snapped at people over minor mistakes. He worked late into the night, rehearsing his presentation. This morning, he was wound tight as a spring. That's why, when he couldn't access the investor file during the operations meeting, he exploded. Looking back now, I understood it all perfectly. Torin was terrified. He needed everything to be perfect for his board presentation. He needed to look competent, in control, masterful. And when I reminded him of rules and protocols, when I represented the old way of doing things, I became the embodiment of everything threatening his position. So he did what scared people do. He lashed out. He eliminated the perceived threat. He fired me in front of 40 witnesses. He called me replaceable. 15 minutes after leaving the meeting, I sat on my couch at home. I had made myself a cup of tea, Earl Grey with honey, and I was drinking it slowly. My hands had stopped shaking. My phone started buzzing. Text messages poured in from coworkers. Myria sent, "Are you okay? I can't believe he did that." Halden wrote, "This is wrong, so wrong." Others sent variations of sympathy and outrage. Then Myria called. "Althea, you need to know what's happening here. Torin is freaking out. He can't get into the board presentation folder." I sipped my tea. "The board presentation folder?" I asked, though I knew exactly which one she meant. "Yes, it has all the financial reports, the growth projections, everything he needs to show the board this afternoon. He's screaming at Ansel, but Ansel can't open it. It keeps asking for something called a legacy key." I smiled into my tea. The legacy key. Of course. Eamon had set up that security measure 5 years ago. It was a master encryption that protected our most sensitive files. Only the designated trustee could unlock it, and the trustee was me. "I'm sorry, Myria, but I don't work there anymore," I said calmly. "Torin said I was replaceable. I'm sure the replacement can handle it." I heard shouting in the background of her call. Then she whispered, "Oh no, he's coming this way. I have to go." She hung up. I looked at my phone, 12:45. Torin had 1 hour and 15 minutes until the board meeting. I wondered how long it would take him to figure it out. The answer came 30 seconds later when my phone rang. Torin's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He called again immediately, and again, and again. On the 5th call, I answered. "Hello." I kept my voice neutral and professional. "Althea, thank God. Listen, there's some kind of system glitch. Everything locked me out of the board folder. I need you to tell me the password right now." His voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the panic underneath. "I don't work there anymore, Torin. You terminated me at noon. If I gave you passwords now, that would be a serious security breach. I could be liable for corporate espionage." Silence on the other end. Then his voice changed. It dropped lower, became harder, more threatening. "Listen to me very carefully, Althea. If you don't give me those codes right now, I will sue you into the ground. I will make sure you never work anywhere in this city again. I will destroy you." I looked at my laptop where my severance email had just arrived. The subject line read, "Termination for cause incompetence." I smiled. "You know, Torin, you fired me for incompetence. Surely an incompetent person wouldn't know the master codes. That wouldn't make sense, would it?" I heard him start to respond, but I hung up. At the office, chaos was unfolding. I knew this because Myria kept texting me updates. She couldn't help herself. She was hiding in the break room, watching everything through the glass walls. "Torin just ordered Halden to hack the folder," she sent. "Halden looks terrified." I could picture it perfectly. Halden was our IT director, a quiet man in his 50s who had worked with Eamon since the early days. He knew exactly how the security systems worked because he had helped implement them. A minute later, Halden is shaking his head. He's showing Torin something on the screen. Torin just went white. I imagined Halden explaining what I already knew. The encryption on that folder was 256-bit, set up personally by Eamon. It wasn't a glitch or a malfunction. It was a deliberate security measure, a dead man's switch. Only the designated trustee could unlock it, and according to the system metadata, the trustee was me. Another text. "Torin just asked who the trustee is. Halden showed him. Torin looks like he's going to be sick." I checked the time, 1:30, 30 minutes until the board meeting. I wondered what Torin would do next. Would he try to drive to my house? Would he try to break into the system? Would he call Eamon and beg for help? Then Myria sent. He grabbed his car keys but then stopped. He's just standing there. He looks frozen. Of course, the board meeting was virtual. Members were logging in from London, New York, and Tokyo. He couldn't leave the office. He was trapped. 2 o'clock arrived. I knew because I was sitting at my desk at home, my laptop open in front of me. I had changed into a professional blouse. I had fixed my hair and makeup. I looked calm, composed, completely in control, because I had a secret that Torin didn't know. That morning, before the operations meeting, I had received an email from Cosima, the board chair. Cosima was 70 years old. Terrifying in the best possible way, and she had been Eamon's friend for 40 years. Her email had been brief. "Althea, I know today is Torin's review. I'm sending you a separate meeting link just in case. Keep it handy." At the time, I hadn't understood why. Now I did. Cosima knew something was wrong. She had probably been hearing whispers, getting reports. She wanted to make sure I could access the meeting if needed. So when 2 o'clock came, I opened the link and waited. I didn't join the meeting yet. I just watched the participant list populate. Cosima joined first, her video feed showing her in an elegant office with dark wood paneling. Then the other board members appeared, 5 faces from around the world, all powerful, all watching. Finally, Torin's video feed clicked on. He was at his desk, his shirt soaked with sweat, his hair disheveled. He looked nothing like the confident CEO who had fired me 2 hours earlier. He looked like a man about to face execution. "Good afternoon, Torin." Cosima's voice was smooth, cultured, and absolutely frigid. "We are ready to review your 6-month performance and vote on your contract renewal." Torin cleared his throat. His hand shook as he reached for his water glass. "Good afternoon, Cosima. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm just loading up the presentation slides." His voice cracked slightly. "We don't need slides yet," Cosima said crisply. "First, we need to verify the voting quorum. We cannot proceed without all shareholders represented." She looked at something off-screen, probably a participant list. Then her eyes narrowed. Torin, where is the representative for the Founders Trust? Eamon's shares account for 40% of the vote. We cannot proceed without his proxy. I watched Torin swallow hard. His eyes darted to the side, probably looking at Ansel, looking for help that wouldn't come. Eamon is unavailable for health reasons, but he gave me verbal proxy to vote on his behalf, Torin said. His voice tried to sound confident but came out desperate. Cosima's expression didn't change, but I saw ice in her eyes. That is not protocol, Torin. Eamon appointed a legal proxy to handle all board matters in his absence. That proxy has full authority to vote his shares. Where is she? The emphasis on she was deliberate. Cosima knew. She had always known. The question was a trap. Torin was sweating visibly now. I could see dark patches spreading across his shirt. He opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. Althea, she went home sick this morning. Emergency, she couldn't make it to the meeting. The lie hung in the air. I saw the other board members exchange glances. Cosima tilted her head slightly like a predator who had just spotted weakness. That's strange, she said slowly. I spoke with Althea this morning. She seemed perfectly healthy to me. I watched Torin's face go from red to white. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. This was the moment. This was when everything would either fall apart or come together. Cosima continued, her voice taking on a tone of casual interest. In fact, I sent Althea a separate meeting invitation this morning, just to ensure she could join us. Standard protocol for the trustee of the Founders' shares. She clicked something on her screen. I saw a notification pop up. Cosima has invited Althea to the meeting. My finger hovered over the join button. I took a breath, smoothed my blouse, and clicked. My video feed appeared on the screen. I was sitting in my home office, the bookshelf behind me, holding my mug of tea. I looked directly at the camera, calm and professional. Good afternoon, everyone, I said pleasantly. Althea, Cosima's face brightened genuinely. I'm so glad you could join us. Torin mentioned you were out sick. I took a sip of my tea, letting the pause stretch just long enough to be uncomfortable. Then I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. I'm not sick, Cosima. I'm feeling perfectly well, actually. However, I was terminated from my position at noon today by the CEO. He informed me in front of 40 staff members that I was replaceable. The reaction was immediate. One board member gasped audibly. Another leaned forward, eyes wide. A third started typing rapidly, probably taking notes. Cosima's expression transformed from polite interest to something arctic and dangerous. Terminated, she repeated the word slowly, as if tasting it. Torin, did you fire the executor of the Founders Trust 2 hours before a board vote? I watched Torin on my screen. He had frozen completely. His mouth was half open, his eyes wide, his body rigid. He looked like someone had hit pause on a video. This was the moment he realized the full magnitude of his mistake. This was when he understood that firing me wasn't just cruel or unfair. It was catastrophically stupid, because I wasn't just an admin assistant. I was the keeper of Eamon's legacy, the holder of his voting power, the person who could make or break his contract renewal. And he had just made me very, very angry. Torin finally found his voice. She was insubordinate. She refused to open a confidential file when I gave her a direct order. His words tumbled out frantically. She was obstructing my authority as CEO. I set down my tea carefully. I refused to unlock the investor privacy database on an unsecured server line. I corrected him calmly. The file contained the personal home addresses of every person on this call, plus their family information and financial details. Opening it on an unsecured Zoom connection would have violated the data protection bylaws that Eamon wrote. I reached off-screen and held up a document. Section 12, paragraph 4 of the company handbook. No employee, regardless of rank, may access level 5 protected data outside of secured channels. I was protecting the board's legal liability. I watched recognition dawn on the board members' faces. They understood now. This wasn't about insubordination. This was about competence versus recklessness. This was about Torin trying to circumvent security protocols because they were inconvenient. However, I continued, my voice taking on a sharper edge, since I am no longer an employee as of noon today, I suppose I'm no longer bound by those protection protocols. I looked directly at Ansel, who I could see hovering in the background of Torin's video feed, trying to hide. Perhaps the board would like to know why Ansel, the CEO's 22-year-old cousin who lists crypto enthusiast on his resume, has administrator-level access to the company bank accounts. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Cosima spoke, her voice dropping to a register I had never heard before. His cousin! She looked at Torin with an expression that could have frozen fire. You gave banking access to a family member with no relevant experience? Another board member jumped in, a woman from the New York office. Is this true? Do we have a nepotism situation combined with security breaches? Torin tried to speak, but his voice came out as a croak. I can explain. Ansel is very talented. I was mentoring him. Mentoring him with our investor funds. The London representative cut in sharply. I watched Ansel flee from the room in Torin's video feed. He literally ran out of frame, probably heading for the exit. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But Ansel had been complicit in this mess. He had taken a job he wasn't qualified for and had been too arrogant to admit it. Cosima held up her hand and everyone fell silent. That was her power. One gesture and the entire board deferred to her authority. We have heard enough, she said coldly. I am calling for an immediate vote on the CEO's contract renewal. Torin's face went from white to gray. Wait, please let me explain. I can fix this. I can. The motion is on the floor, Cosima interrupted. All voting shareholders, please prepare to vote. She turned to face my video feed directly. Althea, Cosima said formally, as the designated proxy for the Founders Trust, which represents 40% of voting shares, how do you cast your vote on the renewal of Torin's contract as Chief Executive Officer? The entire board was watching me now. I could see Torin on my screen, his face a mask of desperation. His lips moved, forming a word without sound. Please. I thought about the last 10 years. I thought about Eamon teaching me everything, trusting me with the company's most precious secrets. I thought about being moved to a desk in the hallway. I thought about watching Torin give my responsibilities to his unqualified cousin. I thought about being called replaceable in front of 40 people. I thought about the company's future, about what would happen if Torin stayed in charge. About how many more Ansels he would hire, how many more protocols he would ignore, how many disasters I wouldn't be there to prevent. The decision was easy. I looked directly at the camera, directly at Torin, and spoke clearly and firmly. Based on the evidence of gross mismanagement, multiple security breaches, nepotistic hearing practices, and the dismissal of key personnel without board consultation, the Founders Trust votes no on contract renewal. Cosima didn't hesitate. The measure fails. Torin, your contract as CEO is terminated effective immediately. I watched the color drain completely from Torin's face. He slumped back in his chair as if all the air had been let out of him. Cosima continued without pause, her voice crisp and businesslike. Security has been notified and is en route to your office to escort you from the building. Please surrender your laptop, your security badge, and any company property in your possession. You will receive information about your severance package within 48 hours. In the background of Torin's video, I saw movement. 2 security guards appeared in his office doorway. Torin looked at them, then back at the camera, his expression completely hollow. The confident, arrogant CEO who had fired me 2 hours ago had disappeared entirely. What remained was just a scared man who had gambled everything and lost. One of the security guards stepped forward and spoke quietly to Torin. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw Torin nod slowly. He stood up on shaky legs, closed his laptop, and handed it to the guard. His video feed went black. For a moment, nobody spoke. The weight of what had just happened settled over all of us. A CEO had been hired and fired in 6 months. A company's leadership had collapsed in a single afternoon. Then Cosima turned her attention back to me. Her expression softened slightly, though she remained professional. Althea, I must apologize on behalf of the entire board. Your termination was clearly improper and unwarranted. We cannot, in good conscience, accept it as legitimate. I waited, knowing what was coming next. The company is now in a precarious position, Cosima continued. We need someone who understands our systems, our history, and our values. Someone who can stabilize operations while we search for appropriate leadership. She paused, and I saw the other board members nodding. Would you be willing to step in as interim chief of staff? You would report directly to the board until we appoint a new CEO. Your primary responsibility would be securing our systems and cleaning up the mess that's been created. I pretended to consider this, though I had known it was coming. Cosima was smart. She had probably planned this entire sequence of events. The separate meeting invitation, the questions about the trustee, the timing of everything. She had given me the stage to expose Torin and the power to remove him. Now she was offering me the throne. But I hadn't spent 10 years learning from Eamon without picking up some of his negotiation skills. I took another sip of my tea, letting the silence stretch. I appreciate the offer, Cosima, I said finally. However, I need to be honest with you. Being publicly fired was humiliating. Being called replaceable was insulting. Having my title and authority stripped away over 6 months was degrading. I looked at each board member in turn. If I come back, it won't be at my old salary. It won't be at my old title. My rate has just doubled, and I want full authority over security protocols and hearing decisions. No CEO overrides without board approval. I watched the board members react to my demands. The New York representative raised her eyebrows. The London member smiled slightly. One of the others looked concerned about the cost, but Cosima didn't hesitate for even a second. Approved, she said firmly. Draw up a new contract with Althea's requirements. Double salary, full security authority, expanded oversight privileges. I'll sign it personally. She looked at the other board members, her expression making it clear this wasn't up for debate. Any objections? Nobody objected. Nobody would dare. Cosima had just orchestrated the removal of a CEO in under an hour. She was not someone you argued with. Excellent, Cosima said, satisfaction evident in her voice. Althea, can you start tomorrow morning? I smiled. This time it was genuine. I can start in an hour. I'll need access restored to all my old systems, plus administrator override codes. And someone needs to immediately revoke Ansel's access to everything before he does any more damage. Consider it done, Cosima replied. She looked at someone off screen and nodded. Halden, our IT director, will call you within 10 minutes. I saw Halden's video feed appear briefly. He gave me a small wave and a huge smile. He had been waiting for this moment, probably had the access codes ready to go. One more thing, I added. I'm going to need a complete audit of everything Torin and Ansel had access to over the last 6 months. Every file they opened, every transfer they authorized, every password they changed. I want to know the full extent of what we're dealing with. Absolutely, Cosima agreed. You'll have full board support and whatever resources you need. She glanced at her notes. Now I need to speak with the board privately about next steps. Althea, thank you for your service today and your continued loyalty to this company. Eamon chose well when he put his trust in you. The compliment hit harder than I expected. My eyes stung suddenly, and I had to blink back unexpected tears. Eamon had believed in me when I was just a 23-year-old kid. He had taught me, trusted me, and built me into the person I was today. Thank you, I managed to say. I won't let him down. You never have, Cosima said warmly. Then her expression returned to business. I'll expect your full report by end of week. We'll schedule another board meeting for Monday to discuss permanent leadership structure. I nodded. I'll be ready. I reached for my mouse to leave the meeting, but Cosima spoke again. Oh, and Althea. When you go back to the office, take Eamon's old office. Not the one in the executive suite, his real office. The corner one with the windows and the mahogany desk, it's yours now. I felt my breath catch. Eamon's office, the heart of the company, the room where every major decision had been made for 15 years. Are you sure? I asked quietly. Very sure, Cosima replied. It's time that office had someone worthy in it again. I nodded, not trusting my voice. I'll leave you to your board business then. Thank you, Cosima. Thank you all. I clicked end meeting, and the screen went black. For a long moment, I just sat there in my home office, staring at the blank screen. My hands were shaking again, but this time from adrenaline and triumph rather than fear and hurt. I had just watched a man destroy his own career. I had just been handed power I never thought I would have. I had just been vindicated in the most spectacular way possible. Then my phone rang. Halden, I answered. Hey, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. I have your access codes ready. Also, I may have already locked Ansel out of every system while you were talking. He's currently locked in the building because his security badge won't work anymore. Security is escorting him out as we speak. I laughed. Actually laughed, deep and genuine. Halden, you're the best. I've been waiting 6 months to do that, he admitted. We all hated what Torin did to you, moving your desk, changing your title, bringing in that incompetent kid. But we couldn't do anything because he was the CEO. Well, he's not anymore, I said. No, he's not, Halden agreed cheerfully. Listen, about half the staff is gathered in the break room right now. They saw your video feed join the board meeting and saw Torin get escorted out. They're asking if you're really coming back. I thought about it. I could play it cool, wait until tomorrow, make a grand entrance. But that wasn't my style. I checked my watch, 2:30. Tell them I'll be there at 3, I said. And Halden, have someone box up anything of Torin's left in Eamon's office. I'm moving in today. At 2:45, I pulled into the parking lot. I parked in my old spot, the one I had used for 10 years before Torin arrived and assigned it to Ansel. Someone had already updated the sign. Where it had said reserved, A. Chen, Ansel's last name, it now read reserved, A. Stewart, my last name. I sat in my car for a moment, letting everything sink in. This morning, I had been fired. This afternoon, I was effectively running the company. The world could change so fast when you held the right keys. I walked into the building. The receptionist, Maria, looked up and her face broke into a huge smile. Althea, we heard, congratulations. Word traveled fast. I smiled back. Thanks, Maria, it's good to be back. I walked through the main floor toward the executive suite. People came out of their offices as I passed. Someone started clapping. Then others joined in. By the time I reached the executive suite, I had an audience of at least 50 people, all applauding. Maria was crying. Halden was grinning from ear to ear. Even the quiet people from accounting were smiling. I felt my throat tighten with emotion. These people had been forced to watch my humiliation this morning. Now they were celebrating my return. Thank you, I said to them all. Now let's get back to work. We have a company to fix. They dispersed slowly, still smiling, still whispering excitedly. I continued down the hall to the corner office. Eamon's office. My office now. The door was open. Inside, 2 maintenance workers were carrying out a box of Torin's belongings. Expensive gadgets, motivational books with titles like Disrupt or Die, and several bottles of kombucha. I stepped inside and looked around. The office was exactly as I remembered it from when Eamon had worked here. Large windows overlooking the city, dark wood paneling, built-in bookshelves filled with company history and industry references. The mahogany desk that Eamon had imported from Ireland 30 years ago. Torin had tried to modernize the space with glass furniture and minimalist decorations, but his touches had already been removed. It looked like itself again. I walked to the desk and ran my hand along the smooth wood. I remembered sitting across from this desk 10 years ago, nervous and eager, while Eamon explained what he needed from an assistant. I remembered learning the systems, earning his trust, becoming his successor even if neither of us had said it out loud. Behind the desk, I found something that made me stop. A framed photo that Torin must have removed and stored away. It showed Eamon and me at the company's 15th anniversary party 5 years ago. He had his arm around my shoulders, both of us smiling. I picked up the photo and set it back on the desk where it belonged. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Then I realized it was Eamon. He rarely used his phone, but someone must have told him what happened. The message was short. Told you that you were the keeper. Proud of you. Give them hell. I felt tears prick my eyes again. I texted back, I will, thank you for everything. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then one final message. It was always yours, I just kept it warm. I sat down in the chair behind the desk. Eamon's chair. My chair now. From here, I could see the entire office floor through the glass walls. I could see my team working, my company functioning, my responsibility stretching out in every direction. I opened my laptop and logged in with my restored credentials. Messages flooded in. Questions about protocols, requests for guidance, and problems that needed solutions. I started working through them methodically, the way Eamon had taught me. Within an hour, I had restored 3 security protocols that Torin had removed. I had scheduled meetings with every department head. I had started the audit of Ansel's activities. I had sent a company-wide email explaining that we were entering a transition period and that stability was the priority. Around 6 o'clock, Halden knocked on my open door. Hey, boss, he said tentatively. Boss sounded strange but right. Hey, Halden, what's up? Just wanted to make sure you're okay. It's been a crazy day. I leaned back in my chair and looked at him. You know what? I'm okay. Actually, I'm better than okay. He smiled. Good, you deserve this. We all know that. After he left, I stood up and walked to the window. The sun was setting over the city, painting everything in gold and orange. I thought about Torin, probably at home by now, trying to figure out what went wrong. I thought about Ansel, realizing that nepotism wasn't a substitute for competence. I thought about Cosima and the board, trusting me with their company's future. Mostly, I thought about the fact that I hadn't been replaceable after all. I had been essential. I just had to prove it. I watered the plant on the windowsill, grabbed my jacket, and headed home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new problems, new opportunities. But tonight, I would rest. I had earned it.